This webinar will basically take two parts. The first part, I'll run you through some slides. I don't have very many slides, and then we'll have a demo of actually creating a dashboard view, which is part of the new view structure. So without any further ado, let's have a look at the agenda. I'll give you a quick introduction, and then we'll have a look at the new hierarchy structure. I'll have a code demo, only it'll be a code demo with a bit of a difference, and I'll explain that when we get to that part. And then we'll take any questions. Now, this is quite a short topic, going through the view hierarchy structure, so the chances of that filling the 60 minutes are not great. So we'll take questions on the actual view structure at the end, but also we can extend that out to the hour if there are people wanting to do that, where we can just take ordinary questions like a normal ask the XAF team. So that's kind of how we'll fill the hour. Anyway, so as an introduction, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Gary Short, and I'm the technical evangelist on the Frameworks team. You can email me at garys@devexpress.com, or you can get me on Twitter at Gary Short. As I always say when I give my email address and my Twitter handle, if you're looking for a fast response, then you're always best to get me at on my Twitter account. Not because I'm always plugged into Twitter, but mainly because your question can only be 140 characters long, and that's far likely to get a quick response. Okay, so let's have a look at the new view hierarchy structure. This is what the hierarchy structure for views looks like in the 10.2 version, which is out just now. So at the top, we have the view, which is an abstract base class for classes which are responsible for representing data, data in views. Under that, we have the composite view class, which is also an abstract class, and that view is composed of view items, and you can get access to the view items collection, and you can get access to these view items through the view items collection. And the view items are really abstract entities which are represented in the UI by the appropriate controls, so calendars for date, items, and that sort of thing. And then under that, it splits, and we have the object view and the dashboard view, and this is where things really get new. So with the new dashboard view, what that does is it displays several views side by side in a single frame. And a frame really is just it's just a housing for it's a site for a view really. So inside the dashboard view, each view has a dashboard view item which can support displaying quite a large range of things, so images and text and action controllers and all those kind of things, and we'll have a look at that later on. Then on the right hand side of that, you have the object view, and that's an abstract base class for views which actually bind to either one or many objects. One of the properties that it surfaces there is the object type property, where you can specify what kind of type of object that you want to see there. So the list view, underneath that on the left hand side, the list view there, it takes part in the auto UI construction, and users can influence this via the list view node in the model. So you can change things like the type of object that's displayed. You can influence the columns that are displayed in the list, specifying whether they're actually displayed or not, and you can specify the order in which these columns appear in, and also if the column is going to be displayed, you can actually see whether it's going to be visible or not visible at any particular time. And then on the right hand side there, you have the details view, which not surprisingly is almost the same as the list view, but it is a view of a single object at a time, whereas the list view is a view of a collection of objects. So that is basically a rundown of the hierarchy. I mean, XAF, as users of XAF will know, XAF uses the model view controller architecture. So the model is basically just whatever business entity you want to show, and there isn't very much for XAF to talk about in that space. I mean, it's basically up to you to construct your own business objects. Although we do ship some in the XAF base classes. These, of course, in this hierarchy that I've run through just now, are the views, and we have a set of controllers as well, which is worth mentioning. It's not on this slide, but it's worth mentioning just to kind of round off that circle. So in our controllers, in the MVC environment, you have the sort of view model pair, and then the controller kind of stands slightly outside of that. The model is responsible for surfacing any of the data which is required to be displayed. The view is then responsible for actually showing that in whatever way the programmer has decided, and the controller really handles all the communication between the view and the model. So that's it on a simple term. XAF is quite complex actually. So under the hood we have kind of two things which make that a little bit more complex. So on the controller side of things, we actually have 34 controllers, which takes a bit of time to get your head around. So controllers are really responsible in XAF terms now. Controllers are really responsible for customizing the program flow, or to manage user interaction, so button clicks and selections and that kind of thing. The controller can also execute code when its owner, either a window or frame, is created, and I'll speak a bit about a frame in more detail in a minute. And it can also be, the controller can also be a container for different kinds of actions. So if we're looking specifically with the views here, then the view controller is registered with both the window and a frame. So as we said before, window is just quite simply the window, but a frame is really a site for a view, and this is where XAF is a little bit more complex than just, say, the base model view controller architecture, because the frame is kind of wrapped up inside of the view, and it's a sort of a site for the view. So XAF is slightly more complex in its implementation of model view controller than just the MVC architecture that you might read about on Wikipedia or something like that. Anyway, what I intend to do now is to go and have a quick demonstration of actually creating a dashboard view. Now, I said in the introduction that this was going to be slightly different, although it's a code view, a code demo. It's going to be slightly different from what you are used to seeing, in as much as we're not actually going to work inside of Visual Studio at all. So what I want to do now is I'm going to, and the reason we're not going to do that is because I went to run through this demonstration just before we came on air, and I found I was a victim of an issue that we know that we have, and we're actually looking into it, but there isn't a fix for it at the moment, and so my demonstration didn't actually work. But thankfully, XAF provides a bit of a workaround for that, because everything that we're going to do, we would have done within the application model inside of Visual Studio. Now, of course, XAF gives you access to the application model outside of Visual Studio. Actually, it gives you access at runtime, and so we're going to use that runtime version of the model editor to actually run through this demonstration. So a little bit different in as much as, and we're not actually inside Visual Studio, but everything you see, the way that the model editor works and everything like that would work exactly the same way with the designer inside of XAF. So first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to go to the Tools menu and fire up the model editor. Okay, so let's just close this down. Now, this, although the model editor is inside a window here, which would be different from inside Visual Studio, everything that you can actually see from about here down is exactly the same as you would see it inside Visual Studio, so that's fine. So the first thing that we're going to do to actually create this this dashboard inside this application, and this application is the Feature Center application that all of the customers who who have XAF, or those of you who are running trial versions, will have access to, because it comes with the download. So inside the view, we're going to add a new dashboard view. And we'll just nip down here and we'll call this something sensible, like demo underscore dashboard, like so. Now if we open it up and select items, we can add a new dashboard view item. I think we'll call that employee dashboard item, like so. And what we need to do now is we need to set a view for that. So if we go up here to the view and click in here, we'll get a list of all the views which are available, and we're going to take the employee list view, like so. Now we're going to add 3 in total in here. So the next one that we're going to add, just to show you the different kind of things that you can add to a dashboard. So let's add another one here, dashboard view item, and this one we'll call sales KPI, for key performance indicator. And what we're going to do here is, for the view, we are going to select KP instance chart detail view, that one there. And this time, just to be slightly different, we're going to add a criteria, and the criteria here is going to be KPI name, and we're going to set that equal to sales, like so. Okay, and we'll add the third dashboard item now, and we'll call this one sales by employee. And for this one, we'll set the view to be order underscore list view underscore chart underscore employees. That should give us quite a nice dashboard. Okay, now that we've set these up and we've added these 3 items to our demo dashboard, what we're going to do now is we're going to just adjust the layout a little bit. So if we take this and customize the layout, if I grab hold of the employee dashboard item and just drag that, whoops, down here, and take this one and drag that alongside, I think that'll do for the layout. I'm not really known for my artistic temperament, so I think we'll leave it there and quit while we're ahead. And now the last thing that we have to do when we're creating a new dashboard is we've set up the dashboard, we've added the items to it, we've adjusted the layout. The only thing that remains to do now is to add some navigation, add it to the navigation items. Otherwise, you aren't going to be able to navigate to it. So again, in the model editor, we find we've got a navigation item nodes, a navigation item node here. If we open that up and just expand items, and we'll find that in the Feature Center application, we have this dashboard section. So we want to put our dashboard in there. If we click on item, we'll put it under simple dashboard, I think. If we add that add a new navigation item. Let's call it something sensible, like Demo Dashboard. And we need to set the view, and we need to set that to the demo dashboard that we created just a moment ago. There we go. Okay, now if the demo gods are with me, and they weren't in rehearsals, let's face it, if I save this now, thank you very much, and close that down, our application should pop back up again. Okay, and if we drill down now into the dashboard section, into the simple dashboard, we do in fact have our demo dashboard here. So if I click on that, nice. So I've made that too small. So you can see that the list here worked, but what we've got here is two charts, and I've made these a little bit too small. So if we go back into the model editor, let's see if we can fix that. Open up the views. Find our demo dashboard. Go to the layout. Customize this layout. Let's just drop this down here a little bit so we can, hopefully we'll be able to see them like that. The layout will not be the best, but hopefully we'll get the idea. As I say, I'm not known for my artistic temperament. So let's save that. Close this down again. Drill back down into our dashboards, into our simple dashboard. Open up our dashboard. And no, it's still not big enough to see the charts. All right, one more try at fixing that. Actually, let's try this instead. There we go. It just occurred to me actually that it's nothing to do with the model editor, it's because of the resolution that I'm running, and all I actually need to do is to make the page bigger. Everybody from the XAF team who is on this call is basically frantically shouting, although I can't hear, I can hear them now shouting, "No, you fool, just make the window bigger." So here we can see the dashboard that we've created. And we have our sales, and we have our employee list view down here. And that is basically how we would set up a dashboard. And we see the key performance indicators. Key performance indicators, for those of you who don't know, although I'm sure you do, is something that basically manages doesn't manage, sorry, it indicates the health of your enterprise. So it's an indicator that you're interested in. So, you know, if you're Amazon, for example, you might be interested in things like sales and sales per minute and that sort of thing. And whereas if you're an ISP, you might be interested in uptime and things like that. And with this dashboard and with the key performance indicators in place like this, you can simply go to one place and you can get a snapshot of how your business stands at the moment. So it's a very powerful addition to XAF and will be very, very useful for customers of XAF who are building UIs and applications for their own customers, because it's a very powerful tool in the enterprise world. And so that's basically our tour of the new view hierarchy. with a little bit of demonstration of how to use that to create dashboards. Of course, as I say, apologies that we weren't actually working inside of Visual Studio there. It had a little bug that I need to get fixed. But on the plus side, as I say, the model editor, how you use it at runtime is exactly the same way as you would use it at design time. Only that model editor would be run within inside Visual Studio. But everything that you saw here in this webinar would actually work exactly the same way in Visual Studio. So that shouldn't have actually detracted from the information that we're trying to put across too much. So I guess with that complete, and with about 20 or 25 minutes into the webinar, I think we'll take questions at this point now on what I've covered here today, the new hierarchy structure. And if we can't do that, if nobody has any questions or there's only one or two questions, then if people are still wanting to hang around inside the webinar for an hour, then we'll just take questions as we did earlier on last month when we did our first Ask the XAF team. We'll just carry on in that kind of vein, and we'll take general questions on XAF. So I guess I'm just going to hand that over to
hey, Gary.
Amanda now. Yay!
Dennis is asking you to talk about the controllers that you and he were talking about earlier.
Okay, so I mentioned the fact that there are 35 controllers. I guess the thing that Dennis is talking about now, he says as he's racking his memory, I think the thing that Dennis is talking about is when you create a controller. So say for example a view controller, the view controller is generic in nature. So what you can do is you can actually you can create a view controller of type dashboard view, for example. And what that means is that controller will only work with dashboard views, and that makes your life as a developer an awful lot more straightforward, because of course, you know, within that controller you then don't have to actually examine any IDs or anything like that. You don't have to do messy casting stuff like that. And also it's a lot more straightforward than, you know, adding the correct type in. It's much easier just to do it that way. So I think that's probably what Dennis is getting on there. This sort of ability, because of the view controllers is generic, to actually pass in a dashboard view, for example, and just have it work with that particular view.
Okay.
And of course, if that's not what he meant, he'll be frantically typing away in the chat window right now.
From Joe, you mentioned that you would discuss frames.
Yes. And did I not go back and do that? That's not particularly smart. So a frame. So in kind of standard model view controller, as I said before, you have the sort of model view pair, and then the controller stands off, and you know, XAF supports that. But we add a little bit of complexity, because our views don't really stand alone as views. There is this sort of concept of a frame, which is basically a site for a view, and so it's the frame itself that maintains the reference back to the controller, and it's the frame that knows about the view. So that's basically all I was actually going to say at that point about frames. They're something that XAF adds to make your lives a little bit more simple, but it kind of makes things a little bit more complex from the standard model view controller architecture. We kind of have this sort of view frame issue going on there.
Okay, let's see. Excuse my ignorance on XAF in general, but how would that work in a scenario where I have a Silverlight application and I'm interested in giving end users the capability to create a dashboard on the fly? Is that possible? How does XAF work with Silverlight?
So I'll take that question in two parts if I can.
Sure.
The first part is, yeah, he kind of asked two questions there. So the question that he asked was, how can you create dashboards on the fly, and how can users create dashboards maybe at runtime and that sort of thing? And then the sort of the sort of thing that added a little bit of complexity to the question was that he wanted that framed within the context of Silverlight. So I'll take that bit first because unfortunately it's very easy to deal with. At this point in time, XAF does not support Silverlight. That will be changing in the future. At some point in the future, we will be. It is on our roadmap to support Silverlight. It will be coming, but as of today, as of 10.2, which is the current version, or 10.2.5 to be more precise, XAF does not support Silverlight. So laying that just to one side, the fact that we can't deal with Silverlight, to answer the sort of more general question, how can you create dashboards on the fly? I'm not actually going to go ahead and demonstrate this at the minute, but inside Tools, there's this facility here. There's an action here for creating a dashboard, and you can fill out the information in pretty much the same way as you watched me build up the dashboard in the demonstration from the model editor. Now, what we were doing there is we were simulating a design time scenario where the actual developer himself or herself was creating the dashboard, and we just happened to be using the model editor outside of Visual Studio because of certain technical difficulties that I was having just before I came on air. But in this scenario here, then end users at runtime would be able to create their own dashboards through the dashboard creation wizard. And of course, that's very useful because the programmer at design time can't possibly imagine every scenario that the end user is going to need. And even if he could, the nature of business is that key performance indicators that you're measuring on a dashboard may be transient in nature. You may only be really interested in, for example, if you're an ISP and you're interested in a particular uptime of a server, that might just be for a few days or a few weeks because you're having particular problems with that server, or you know that there might be a problem with the hard drive and you're waiting on replacement parts or whatever, and you only want to monitor that key performance indicator for a short time. Well, this facility here lets you, add in and remove the dashboards as the needs of your enterprise change. So hopefully that answered the question. It's a little bit disappointing that we don't support Silverlight at this moment, but it's not like we've forgotten about Silverlight. It's not like we don't understand how important that is, and that's going to be on our roadmap, and you'll be seeing that in the future.
Is there a way to make several views of a dashboard interact without writing a controller?
I would never suggest that you do that, simply because XAF itself is built on the model view controller architecture, and if you are just going to jump between the model and the view, or if you're asking two views to talk to each other about their underlying model, or you're asking one model in one place to update several views, and you're doing that outside of the controller, then you break that model view controller architecture. And that model view controller is a pattern, and it's been around, since the late 70s, to be honest. I mean, it's wrapped up there in Smalltalk, for example, which has been around since the late 70s, and a pattern that lasts a long time like that is a powerful pattern and one that works. So I would urge you not to break that pattern, and always to create a controller when you want to manage any kind of user interaction or any kind of program flow like that. I would urge you always to use the controller.
The team is saying too on the back end that there's plans potentially for a dashboard control that would provide that capability, I guess, in the upcoming.
Right. So I guess in there that would be slightly different. So if the XAF team provided an actual control itself, then the communication mechanism would be handled internally and would be kind of invisible to the actual programmer who was using the control. So they would ask for communications between certain artifacts on the dashboard to happen, and the XAF team within the control would manage that in a sort of architecturally compliant manner, and that would be fine. But at the moment, when no such control exists at this time, I would definitely recommend that you always create controllers when you're looking to customize program flow or to manage user interaction in any way.
From Larry, when is XAF going to support .NET MVC framework?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So for those of you who don't realize, and probably a lot of you will, but I guess if you're not working in the web area, you might not realize that if you want to create a web-based application on the .NET platform now, you really have two options, and that is the sort of traditional ASP.NET WinForms way, and there is this new MVC way. And Microsoft will tell you, and to be honest, as a former architect myself, I would back this up, that neither one of these is necessarily better than the other. They will fit particular scenarios. One will fit particular scenarios better than the other, and it very much depends on which scenario you find yourself in, which one you would select. As of the moment, XAF only supports the ASP.NET WinForms platform just now. However, DevExpress does have some MVC extensions that we put out, and so Developer Express is actually getting into the MVC marketplace. You will appreciate, of course, that because XAF scaffolds the UI for you based on your business entities, then that scaffolding is dependent upon the controls that are available within the DevExpress control suite. And so XAF is a little bit of the what you might describe as the poor relation, in as much as we can't actually do anything until controls for Silverlight or controls for WPF or whatever have actually been created in their own right for for other teams and are stable, and then once they've been created, we can actually sort of subsume them into XAF. So at the moment, I'm not saying that XAF will never support the MVC framework, but at the moment, our control offering for MVC is very immature. We've been doing it for a couple of releases now, but that's where we are, and so there hasn't really been time for the XAF team to examine how that kind of scenario of supporting MVC would work. And so MVC support for XAF is some way off in the distance just now.
Okay, well that is all the questions thus far. I'm about to post a link in the chat window to all of the attendees of a video from the roadmap about what's coming up with XAF, just as a refresher.
Yeah, that'd be really useful. I mean, I can tell you now that there isn't anything about MVC in the roadmap, but just to kind of give you heart, I mean, I'm not, just because it isn't coming, and in version 1 or sorry, in 11.1 or 11.2, that does not necessarily mean to say that the XAF team have taken the decision that they aren't going to support MVC. It's just that we need the actual control offering in general to be strong and to be both broad and deep before we can use it with XAF. Because you can imagine the ASP.NET control suite that DevExpress offers is very mature. There are a lot of controls there, and so the applications that you can create with XAF for the ASP.NET platform is very rich. And you can imagine that if you're already doing that, if you're already creating ASP.NET applications with XAF, and you heard that XAF is also going to support MVC, then you would expect the same kind of breadth and depth of controls. You would want to be able to create the same kind of applications that you can create at the moment on ASP.NET on the MVC platform, and so naturally we have to wait until those controls are created.
Okay, let's see. What about domain component support for XAF?
Yes, the domain component, domain components is something it's one of these ongoing things. It's such a large piece of work that it was never going to be all finished in one release. But I believe domain components is released now. There is a release in 10.2. I think actually if you go back to even the last release in the 9x cycle, there was domain components in there. And so if you wish to use domain components, the ability exists right now for you to do that. But it's a feature that is and part of the architecture. Actually, I mean, it's more a part of the architecture than it is a feature of XAF. So it's part of the underlying architecture, and as you can imagine, going forward, that's going to be extended, and so you're going to be seeing more work done on domain components because it is a particularly powerful piece of architecture. However, if you want to use domain components now, it is there in a kind of released state. It's not in a beta state. It is there in 10.2 today. You can use it today, but what is available today certainly doesn't represent the finished work on domain components. And you will see in 11.1, if I remember the roadmap off the top of my head, and obviously because the roadmap document hasn't been released yet, I'm actually casting my mind back to early December when we had the meeting. But as far as I'm aware, there is going to be domain component work and domain component release in 11.1. So what you have in XAF 10.2 today will be getting extended, certainly in the next release.
The team agrees with you. They said it's planned for 11.1.
Wow. I always love it when the team agrees with me.
4 months.
Right.
Dennis is
That's
saying.
perfect. It's in about 4 months. Yeah. It always makes life a little bit awkward for poor evangelists like me who are on a single screen and I can't actually see what the team are saying in the chat box. So I only have to sit here and keep my fingers crossed that I'm saying
on the right track.
Yeah, and the team are not frantically typing in the chat window, no, he's talking rubbish.
I should get a button like just a buzzer.
Yeah. Wrong, thanks for taking part.
Larry's asking, does it support pure XPO outside of XAF?
Does what support?
Domain, I'm not sure. Larry's been asking about the domain components.
Right. Domain components, as far as I'm aware, and again, the team will keep us right, so if you can just check what they're writing, Amanda. As far as I'm aware, domain components is a feature of XAF and isn't something that you can use outside of XAF because it's there to create business objects for you with the kind of interface and those kind of things. But my understanding is it's a piece of architecture to operate inside the confines of XAF.
Okay, let's see. Is there any, or you're done with your demo, right, Gary? We're just taking questions now.
Absolutely. I mean, if any, I'm just killing time until we can finish here and I can get my dinner. But I'm willing to take questions on any aspect of XAF. As I said, this particular demonstration, the team were keen to actually bring the good news of the new view hierarchy and particularly with dashboards to our customers. And so, we wanted to do this webinar. But the nature of what we're trying to show here is that it was never going to fit into an hour. And so, I'm more than willing now just to take general questions on XAF or on DevExpress or on Scotland or on anything that I actually know the answer to. A bit like a pub quiz.
Well, so far that's all the questions that we have. So...
Excellent. I should get to ask questions now to make sure the audience were paying attention.
Do you have any upcoming webinars coming up, Gary? I didn't look through the full lineup. Any further?
So that's a very interesting question. What I did was I put forward 18 abstracts. So I have 18 webinars, of which this is the first of the 18 that I put in. So there's 17 more to come. Unfortunately, the nature of being a technical evangelist is that you're on the road a lot and you're going to conferences and you're speaking to customers and user groups and that kind of thing. So from 1 month into the future, really, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing. So what I do is I really just work out with a mail on a kind of month-by-month basis when the next one's going to be. So for example, I'm actually leaving on the 17th of February to head across to start a tour to do, I'm doing the New York City Code Camp, and then I'm in Germany at a conference, and then I'm across to Seattle for the MVP Summit. And so I won't be doing anything in the second half of February, but if Emil schedules the next webinar for me before the 17th, and to date I haven't heard that he has done that, but if he does, then the next one will be before then. However, if it's not then it won't be until March the next webinar will be.
Okay. You're traveling a lot.
I do. It's how I like to do my evangelism. I like to get out and meet the customers and actually deal with their problems and see them face to face instead of just being this kind of disjointed voice on a webinar or on a video or whatever. But I will tell you there will definitely be another webinar in March, because the idea, I believe, is that every team does an Ask the Team type webinar every month. So if nothing else happens, in March there will be an Ask the XAF Team webinar. And there will also there may or may not, depending on my schedule, be webinars of other subjects. But in general, there are 17 more webinars that I've got set up, and they will be run at some time in the future. So
wow.
I think the short answer to that question is yes.
Dennis is also saying that we have plans for blogs about domain components, localization, and new XPO stuff. So
yes, we do, and that will all be, yes, absolutely, that will all be coming in the future, real soon now, as Microsoft like to say. That stuff will all be coming.
And Bill Hazelwood is asking, will Scotland make it to the next World Cup?
If we're talking rugby, absolutely. If you're talking soccer, then probably not, I'm afraid. But then again, I'm not really interested in those silly lawn fairies anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So long as the rugby team does well, that's fine by me.
How about cricket?
Well, luckily, cricket is not really a game played in Scotland. There's no national leagues for cricket in Scotland. It's very much a county game played by those silly southerners down in England. So when, although it didn't quite happen this time, but when England usually get trounced or spanked at cricket, then I can sit there and laugh normally, because we don't play cricket ourselves. So at least they can't say, well, we're still better than Scotland.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Gary, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks to the XAF team, too, who are on the line. And just to let you know, a quick peek into next week for what's coming up with the DevExpress webinar series. Next Monday, February 7th, Julian, our CTO, is starting a JavaScript series. Writing JavaScript when you already know C# can seem like a piece of cake. After all, it's a C-like language, so what can go wrong? Julian starts off a series of webinars to teach you the basics of writing JavaScript. No experience is necessary apart from an understanding of C#. This particular webinar will concentrate on types. And next Wednesday, February 9th, MVVM with DevExpress charts. How you can use MVVM concepts with the DevExpress charting platform with our charting evangelist, Brian Wood. And next Thursday, February 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, reporting in Silverlight with reporting evangelist Seth Juarez. This session will explain the ins and outs of using our award-winning reporting suite in conjunction with Silverlight. As Silverlight is a different kind of platform, the session will cover some of the basics of Silverlight as well as how our reporting suite interacts with a client in this environment. And at noon next Thursday, MVC Combo Box extension, Cascading Combo Boxes. In this webinar, you'll learn how to use the DevExpress ASP.NET MVC Combo Box extension. You'll also see how to set up Cascading Combo Boxes with our ASP.NET evangelist, Mehul Harry. So that's all the webinars that are coming up next week. We have a full lineup of webinars currently scheduled through March. You can check them out and register for them at devexpress.com/webinars. And again, if you missed anything from this webinar or you want to review it later, you can visit us at the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com. So with that, again, thank you, Gary. Thanks to the XAF team, and thank you all for joining us, and thanks for choosing DevExpress.